Hey, anime royal fans, if you're tired of wasting precious gems on summons that just don't deliver, then you're in the right place. We know the struggle of hours of grinding, testing, and wondering if that shiny new unit is actually worth it. But don't worry, we've done all the hard work for you. We've spent countless hours analyzing every unit in the game, so you don't have to. Stick around because today we're diving deep into our ultimate anime royale tier list. We'll break down the best of the best and the worst of the worst, so you know exactly which units to invest your hard-earned gems in. Ready to save yourself some time, gems, and frustration? Let's jump right in. I'm quickly moving on to the video, and I'm ranking units in Anime Royale. Before we start, if you enjoy these types of tier list videos, don't forget to like the video and subscribe. Enjoy watching.
A very small portion of the audience is subscribed to the channel. Please don't forget to subscribe if you like these types of videos. Thanks.
The units in this tier are, in order from top left to bottom right, Roro, Rico, and Tojiro. Alright, let's dive into the bottom of the barrel with the E tier units in Anime Royale. First up, we have Roro. Now, Roro isn't the worst, but he's definitely not winning any awards. Sure, his DPS is decent, but his small AoE is kind of like trying to hit a home run with a toothpick. Not exactly ideal. And let's not forget the fact that he's super expensive to place. You could basically build an entire team with the cost of getting Roro set up. So unless you're looking to challenge yourself, you might want to skip this guy. Moving on, we've got Raiko, who honestly had potential with that cone AoE attack. I mean, she can dish out some serious damage for a rare unit, no doubt about it. But again, here comes the kicker. She's pricey. It's like going to a fancy restaurant and realizing you've just spent all your money on appetizers. Sure, it tastes great, but you're left wondering if it was worth it. And then there's Tojiro. Poor Tojiro. With his sad little range and lackluster DPS, he might just be the worst rare unit in the game. If you're running Tojiro, you're either a hardcore fan or you just enjoy living life on the edge. No judgment here. The units in this tier are, in order from top left to bottom right, Inosuke, Vegetable, Fireleg, and Goko. Alright, let's dive into the depths of Anime Royale and talk about some of the D tier units you might want to avoid, unless you're in the mood for a challenge. First up, we have Inosuke, who, let's be real, might be the biggest disappointment among the epic towers. This guy is ground only, and while you'd think he'd make up for it with some stellar damage output, his low range just doesn't cut it. It's like bringing a knife to a gunfight. Sure, he tries, but without the range or damage to back it up, Inosuke ends up falling short, quite literally. Now, on to Vegetable. Don't let the name fool you. This rare tower has surprisingly decent range, and with a multi-hit attack, he's a solid pick for breaking those pesky shields. But let's not get too excited. Vegetable is still hanging out in the D tier, so he's not winning any awards. Fireleg, on the other hand, tries to bring some heat to the mix. With full AoE when maxed out, and a burn effect that can tear through ground enemies' shields, you'd think he'd be ranked higher, but nope, still D tier material. And then there's Goko, who does have a multi-hit on placement, making him somewhat useful for shield breaking, but beyond that, he doesn't really pack the punch you need for those tougher battles. So if you're looking to dominate in Anime Royale, these units might not be your go-to picks, unless you're looking for some extra spice in your gameplay. The units in this tier are, in order from top left to bottom right, Netsu, Sasuke Kirin, Pickle, Naruto, and Sosoki. Alright, let's dive into some C tier units in Anime Royale that you might want to think twice about before investing your resources. First up, we've got Netsu, and let me tell you, he's not bringing the heat you'd expect. Sure, he applies burn just like Sasuke Kirin, but with a few more ticks. Great, right? Not exactly. That's about all Netsu has going for him. If you're thinking about using him, just remember, there are much better legendaries out there. You might only keep him around to prove a point, or if you just have a soft spot for the guy. Now, speaking of Sasuke Kirin, if Netsu isn't convincing you, then Sasuke Kirin certainly won't. He's arguably the worst legendary in the game. Why? Well, his burn is pretty lame. He only has 2 placements, and let's not even get started on his range. It's atrocious. The only reason you choose him over an epic is because of his stats, but honestly, you'd probably have better luck with most epics. Unless you're doing it for a challenge or just for the memes, I'd steer clear of this one. But hey, it's not all bad news in C tier. Pickle is actually a solid epic heal unit that comes with a multi-hit attack and some pretty good DPS. The downside? You can only place 2 of him, which really limits his impact, especially when compared to units like Kokuin. And if you're looking for a rare unit that can actually carry you, Naruto and Sasuke are your guys. Naruto is perfect for story mode, and Sasuke is a beast for infinite mode, making them the unexpected MVPs of the C tier. The units in this tier are, in order from top left to bottom right, Goku Dark, Ulquiorra, Zenitsu, Kokuin, and Kakashi. Alright, let's dive into the B tier units of Anime Royale. Now, don't sleep on these guys just because they're B tier. They might not be the flashiest, but they definitely have some solid perks that can keep your team going strong, at least until you score some of those higher tier units. First up, we've got Goku Dark. He's a decent heal unit. Think of him as your reliable standby until you snag Ichi. But here's the catch. Goku Dark doesn't come with multi-hit or burn damage at max level, so he's not great against those pesky shielded flying enemies. So yeah, he's a bit of a mixed bag. Next is Ulquiorra, and let me tell you, his evolution is totally OP, with one of the highest DPS rates among legendary units and a long line AoE attack. You're gonna want to evolve this guy as soon as possible. Trust me, it's worth it. Now, let's talk about some of the unsung heroes. Zenitsu, for example, might seem a bit underwhelming at first glance. His only real saving grace is his stun, and honestly, if it weren't for that, he'd probably be scraping the bottom of the tier list with Sasuke Kirin. But then we have Kokuin, a true gem for the story mode. This epic heal unit has great DPS, a multi-hit attack, and is super cheap to place and upgrade. And don't forget Kakashi, a solid support with his stun ability and decent DPS, making him a one-man army for story mode. So while these B tier units might not steal the spotlight, they're definitely not to be overlooked. The units in this tier are, in order from top left to bottom right, Kaneki, Jotaro, Minara, Ichi, Micro, Freeze, Alligator, and Nemo. Alright folks, let's dive deeper into the A tier units of Anime Royale because this tier has some absolute powerhouses that you need to know about. Let's start with Kaneki. Now, this guy is a shield breaking machine. Seriously, if you're struggling against enemies with shields, Kaneki is your go-to guy when he's not maxed out. But here's the kicker, when you do max him out, he transforms into one of the best DPS units in the game. High damage, low SPA. He's basically a boss slayer on steroids. Trust me, you don't want to sleep on this guy. Now, moving on to Jotaro, who is hands down the best support in Anime Royale right now. This dude does it all. Stuns, knockbacks, slows. You name it, he's got it. And his DPS? It's no joke either. The only catch? He's a bit grounded, literally. He can only target ground units, which can be a bit limiting, but with everything else he brings to the table, it's a trade-off worth making. If you're looking for someone to keep enemies at bay and support your team, Jotaro is the man for the job. And let's not forget about Minara. This guy is a beast when it comes to range and DPS, and he's got the best DOT in the game. Imagine maxing him out and watching his cone AoE attack cover massive chunks of the map. Oh, and did I mention he can hit flying enemies too? If you like having an unstoppable force that can handle pretty much anything thrown his way, Minara should be on your radar. Alright, let's talk about some of the other standout legends. Micro is all about that raw power. In terms of sheer DPS, he's the strongest legendary unit you can get. He's got a great AoE and can target flying enemies, but fair warning, he's a bit pricey to place and upgrade, so he's best used in infinite mode. Meanwhile, Nemo is your go-to for farming in story and raids because she ramps up faster than anyone else. You need resources? Nemo's got you covered, and for those of you who love a bit of freezing action, Freeze is your guy. Super cheap, great DPS, and when maxed, he can target flying enemies too. And lastly, we have Alligator, the second best support with an insane range and full AoE slow. His SPA might be a little slow, but with everything else he brings, he's an excellent addition to your roster. The units in this tier are, in order from top left to bottom right, Friend, Ulquiorra second, Freeze final, Stabs and Lawlight. Alright, let's dive into the absolute powerhouses of Anime Royale, starting with Friend. If you've been playing for a while, you probably already know that Friend isn't just the top dog, she's on a whole other level. Her DPS is ridiculously high, surpassing even that of most mythics. And get this, she's full AoE with an insane range. Hybrid attacks? Check. She's got everything you could want in a unit, making her the ultimate must-have. If you see her on your team, you know you're in for a good time. Next up, we've got Ulquiorra second. Now, this guy is no joke. He's one of the best DPS mythics in the game, boasting a large AoE and one of the highest ranges. Plus, he's a hybrid, which makes him super versatile. His SPA isn't too shabby either, meaning he can dish out consistent damage. If you need a heavy hitter that can handle almost anything the game throws at you, Ulquiorra II is your go-to. And let's not forget about Freeze Final, the ultimate endgame shield shredder. Freeze Final is like a gift from the gods if you're dealing with those pesky, tanky enemies. As a heal unit, his multi-hit attack and massive AoE make sure nothing slips by. His attack channels for so long that it almost feels like his SPA is non-existent. Pair him up with the right team and you'll see just how quickly he can turn the tide of battle. The video ends here. See you in another video. Don't forget to subscribe.